Moving on to long ball number 2 here on Monday morning. Lots of European action to kind of look at. Premier League got underway, as did many of the major European leagues, and some Italian Cup action, as we are all too aware of. There are plenty of Americans plying their trade overseas. So what kind of came across your timeline? What American performances kind of were notable in your mind there, Jason?
Well, okay. Considering the drama, considering everything we've recently talked about with Christian Pulisic and the renewed back and forth with the previous generation, thanks to the Pulisic documentary, great to have him score a goal. It's a Coppa Italia match. It's not a league match. You know, the league doesn't start until this coming weekend, but it still is a good thing. You know, I think there's lots of questions about where Milan is and whether or not they're going to be able to really compete in Serie A this season. But from a selfish American perspective, you definitely want Christian Pulisic to be good, to be scoring goals and feeling confident, regardless of what happens for his club, because we've got that thing called the World Cup coming up next year in the United States of America. And look, I've heard some very dicey rumors that Pochettino is really not thrilled with this whole Pulisic thing, and that there could even be, I'm not reporting this as true. I'm simply telling you that I've heard a rumor that he might leave Pulisic off his team until something changes with the way this is going. Now, again, that would be dramatic. That would be, even if it's only a friendly window coming up in September. We do have games coming up very soon. If Pochettino was to leave Pulisic off, if he called everybody else up who would be counted as an A team, and he leaves Christian Pulisic off, that is a massive, massive thing. It would become the biggest story in American soccer, probably since Landon Donovan was left off the 2014 World Cup team. And I don't think Pochettino is that stupid. Like, I think he's going to try to work this out. But with that being said, really good to have Pulisic on the score sheet and doing things that we know he can do. Otherwise, though, Rob, the thing that stands out for me is that Crystal Palace started out their season with a point away to Chelsea, when people were thinking, people are kind of hyping up Chelsea a little bit. Now, I have them 4th in my predicted standings. I think a lot of people do, but they're supposed to be better than Crystal Palace, and Palace able to hold on defensively and really actually take it to Chelsea at times was very positive. And Chris Richards was part of that, right? He wasn't perfect. He had a couple moments, but I think particularly towards the end of that game, as Palace was trying to close it out and get that point at Stamford Bridge, I think he played pretty well, and I'm encouraged by his growth.
Yeah, we shall see how that goes. But Crystal Palace, if they are able to keep that squad together as it is in these first couple of weeks, they are going to be a force to be reckoned with. Obviously, won the FA Cup, won the Community Shield last week over Liverpool in penalties, and then held the surging Chelsea to a scoreless draw and kind of got ripped off. I mean, they had a goal taken away, dubiously, shall we say, for a player being near the Chelsea wall, which seems to be a rule that they sometimes enforce, sometimes not. Yeah. So they could have actually snatched the 3 points, but
that's true.
Hopefully Chris Richards and Palace, continue their positive results. But on kind of like, as we go from the up positive of Pulisic maybe to the medium of Richards and Palace, we probably go to the lower end of the form teeter-totter on opening weekend. Johnny Cardoso, he had a big move this offseason, and his debut probably didn't go as he would have wished.
Yeah, I mean, it was a loss for Atletico Madrid away to Espanyol. I watched that game. I adopted Atleti on my trip to Spain last year, and I was kind of, I was emotionally involved as a fan, or becoming a fan of Atleti, as much as I was emotionally involved because of Johnny Cardoso making his debut for Atleti. Atletico Madrid got an incredible free kick goal from Julian Alvarez to take a lead in the first half. Incredible. About as good as you can hit a free kick. Julian Alvarez in the 37th minute. Go watch it. It's worth the time. But then at halftime, and Johnny did pick up a yellow card, right? Okay, so Johnny Cardoso picks up a yellow card in the first half, and Diego Simeone decides to take off both Cardoso and Conor Gallagher at halftime. Both of his holding midfielders, he takes them off. He brings on Koke, obviously longtime servant of the club, incredible legend, not trying to talk ill of Koke, and Pablo Berrios. And they subsequently lose control of the game. They lose control of the midfield. They lose control of the game. Espanyol starts peppering them with chances, and eventually they get 2 goals, and Espanyol wins the game. And I look, obviously, again, I'm biased. not only am I upset that he lost the game and it's a blow to their chances to maybe win the title this year. I know it's away to Espanyol, but you've got to get away points in this league if you're going to keep up with Real Madrid and Barcelona. I really didn't like the way that Diego Simeone the way that Diego Simeone handled his substitutes. I'm all flustered because of this. I thought it did Johnny dirty. Again, if you don't trust him to maybe stay disciplined and not pick up a second yellow, I guess that's an argument for taking him off. He got it just before halftime, that yellow card. But man, it's really damning. Without falling into the trap of results-based analysis, Rob, it's really damning the way that game played out in the second half with how much control of the match and opportunity that Espanyol had.
Yeah. Coming back to the shores of England, it's been pointed out in the chat, and I can't really ignore the efforts of one Joshua Sargent. He's got 3 goals in 3 games for Norwich. He's been rumored with a move away from Norwich, but doesn't necessarily. Have you heard anything about that? Is there anything to him moving away, or is he
after the Wolfsburg deal? I believe it was the Wolfsburg deal fell through. It doesn't seem like anything's happening with Josh Sargent. I think he wants to stay there. He's got his family very settled in Norwich. I think he's comfortable, and he wants to try to help the Canaries get back up to the top division. So if you're going to have him, better to have him scoring goals. And we know he can do it at this level. We know he can do it in this division. Now, I think it would be easy for people to say, well, Josh Sargent should be challenging himself and maybe going to the Bundesliga if he wants to be a key factor in the World Cup next year for the United States, because he's been on the outs, right? He hasn't really gotten a chance significantly. He hasn't scored a goal famously for the U.S. in, I think it's 6 years at this point.
Pre-COVID, I know that.
Yeah, so, people are down on him as a national teamer. And if he's going to convince Pochettino, or if he's going to get a shot, maybe he does need a move to a higher level. But man, this is also a guy that is allowed to make choices based on his own personal happiness. And I think that's tough because, maybe for him, it's not all about the World Cup. Maybe for him, it's not all about being an international or a World Cup player. It's about a lot of things that go beyond that. And if we're like, oh, if it was me, I would definitely go to the Bundesliga. Or I definitely. I don't know. I'm happy for Josh Sargent, and I do think it makes it tough for us to kind of want to talk about him on a regular basis if he's scoring goals in the championship, Rob, because it's like, well, yeah, but does that translate? Who cares? He doesn't play for the USMNT national team anymore. At least he's not getting an opportunity, or when he does, he doesn't score. Maybe we should be focused on other people.
Yeah, it's hard to lean on Josh Sargent too much to leave, because he has earlier in his career pre-Norwich, he bounced around a little bit, sometimes successfully, and sometimes it's gone really bad for him. So he's in a place where he's regularly scoring goals. Maybe, don't mess up a thing that's working right. Don't spoil what's going right in the right direction. And, he's scoring goals. Norwich they're probably like the 21st best team in England, honestly. Sure. They just go up and down. Up and down. They're like one of the best normal teams that's not owned by like an oligarch.
Yeah, that might be a little high at this point in time, but you're right. Like that, they are in that yo-yo bucket of clubs, right? They're a Burnley. There's a couple other teams that
they're
are
more fun than Burnley. They've had some very exciting seasons. But my point is, if he's got a settled family and his game is going well, and he can, he's doing well where he's at, so continue doing that. And just, if you just keep on racking up the goals, he's on a 3-3 situation. That Pochettino can't ignore that for too much longer.
I'm not going to compare him exactly, because I don't think this is Josh Sargent saying, no, I don't want to play for the national team. That's not, I don't think that's the case. I think he would love to get a call up and he'd love to play. But think about, and I was reading something about some game the other day, and I don't even remember, and it was talking about how you really need to have a press-resistant midfielder to make a certain system work, right? Like those guys, those press-resistant midfielders are so few and far between that they're like, they're the gold standard, they're platinum, they're worth every single, And I'm thinking, man, Darlington Nagbe could have been that guy. He could have gone to Europe. He could have been a star player. I mean, he could have played at a very high level. I'm not saying he would have been a Premier League superstar or a Bundesliga superstar, but Darlington Nagbe, if he had chosen that path, could have been a very good player in Europe for a number of years. And maybe that would have been, and if he had decided he wanted to play for the U.S. men's national team, he could have been the key guy. He would have been holding on a position in that midfield for the U.S. men for a decade, because that's how good he was and maybe how good he still is. And yet he chose a different path. That wasn't the path for Darlington Nagbe. He wanted to stay home. He wanted to take care of his kids. He wanted to be comfortable. And he's, who are we to judge that? We can say it's hard to put Darlington Nagbe up against players who played in Europe or up against players who were playing at a higher level. But in terms of who he's been, and he's been excellent what he's done for a decade, and he's happy. Maybe that's Josh Sargent. Doesn't want to push himself right now, especially. It was Josh Sargent, 25?
Something
25,
like
26?
that. He went to Europe quite a while ago when he was right at the age of 18. So yeah, makes sense. He's in that age range. And Norwich City, very much like the Midwest of England too. So he's a like St. Louis kind of guy.
St. Louis kid, yeah. I think Norwich is pretty pastoral, right? It's not the big city. It's not bustling London or anything like that. I mean, he played in Germany. Remember, if he passed on this move to Germany, he played in Germany and maybe just doesn't want to go back.
Indeed. We'll see. And in the last second, shout out Jetman 022. Shout out to Lyndon Gooch, a name I haven't thought about in a very long time, getting a goal for Huddersfield.
Lyndon
So Americans
Gooch,
all over the place.
not obviously involved in the moment, but a long time player for Sunderland. Went up and down a couple times between lower divisions with Sunderland, Lyndon Gooch. So shout out to him.